Oh, guys, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Both of you being here, the questions I'm going to throw your way. By all means, take them individually. Share the answers if you want. If you both got an opinion, both jump in. I'm sure this isn't your first rodeo, so by all means, answer how you see fit. And we'll start off really, really straightforward, which is basically, how's your day going so far?
Good. We're both new parents, so you know, definitely had to deal with a blowout shit this morning. So I changed out of my, first metal shirt and switched over to my death shirt. But other than that, it's been pretty good. Yeah.
Like having a baby is just constantly being covered in some sort of bodily fluid. Um, sometimes it's a drag, but other times it's like the best thing ever. Just being a parent, not the bodily fluid part.
Yeah, it's kind of metal in that way.
So far, so good. I similarly mopped up a pile of vomit about 15 minutes ago. um, Trying to teach my dude how to eat things other than formula. But you know what? This is my life now. I can't complain.
Congratulations
Nice.
to you both. That's incredible. I'd say it gets easier, but I've got a 19-year-old and he's still shitting and puking everywhere as well.
Nice. Nice.
Guys,
Very nice.
we're coming to the end of the year. Overall, are you satisfied with the year Dystopia A.D.'s had?
I guess we have been working on this record for the last 2 years and change, and it's to say it's not our primary hustle would be an understatement, right? Like most of us, we've got day jobs and families. Um, and I think just the amount of cycles that were available to make this record versus the previous were fewer. So I think just getting it to market, right? Finishing the album and releasing it, to me, that's a win. And honestly, been blown away by the feedback so far. Was expecting a bad word or two. And I really, honestly, I don't think I've even heard a whisper of negative feedback. Have you, Aki? I almost want some, right? I almost feel like
Yeah.
it's too pandering. But I think just overwhelmingly heard a lot of good stuff about the new record. Whereas with the last one, there was good things people had to say. There were also plenty of bad things. Production sucked. The clean vocals sucked. Too many Opeth ripoffs. There was definitely criticism of the last record, and all of that. I shouldn't say all, but some of it matters, right? Some of it's just bullshit or noise. But getting a holistic view of maybe what your listeners think, I think is helpful. I don't think you should overanalyze it or let it.
Yeah.
I don't think something you should obsess over and let it kind of guide your craft. But again, I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant as I tend to do. But honestly, the feedback has been so overwhelmingly positive, and I'm really just blown away by that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think everything I've seen about this record has been positive. And I actually thought the last record was received pretty well. I mean, the negative feedback was pretty minimal.
Hmm.
But I mean, honestly, just the fact that we were able to get it done as both, trying to get all the recorded parts down in before we actually had kids and then just getting everything else done, after we had kids, I think that just throws a whole other complication into the whole matter. But proud to have done it at this point, and I'm proud of the record. Chris did an awesome job, like just really getting it over the goal line. I don't know if that's actually an analogy you guys would understand. that's an American football analogy, but yeah.
No, it amounts to the same thing with football
Okay.
over here, soccer, as you will.
Sure.
Goal is still the aim is still to get it
Yeah.
over the goal line.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, of course, it has been just a few weeks now since the release of the new album, Doomsday Psalm. Guys, it's no secret that I thought it was a staggeringly great release, and I loved your previous album as well. This reaction that you talk about, majority are positive. Are you finding it coming from both sides? So obviously you have your reviews, your outlets that are giving you reviews, but also just your general comments on, say, social media and stuff like that. How about that side of things?
Yeah, no, nothing. I don't think anything out of the ordinary. I always love it when a listener kind of goes out of their way to say like, I'm loving the record, or this is my favorite song, or this one part kind of always gets me. I think someone on the last record was like, I get so pumped at this part. I put it on at the gym. Like I love that. Just hearing how people maybe connect with us in the music in very specific ways. Because sometimes I feel the same way. It's like, yeah, I love that part too, or that's exactly how I wanted. I was hoping you would feel when you heard this thing we wrote. I guess like one funny, and it was, again, it was positive, but like one funny comment I got, it was maybe a press release post on social about the record, the new record, and someone just wanted to talk about the old record.
Oh,
And it was like, guys, this is pretty good, but have you heard the 2020 album? And like for us, I thought it was, I think, a logical progression, in some sense, maybe a continuation creatively, but logical progression in terms of just the musicianship and the production. I was like, all right, if you liked the last album, you're gonna love this, right? It's longer, it's maybe to me it's better. And I just, for this one fan to say like, great, all right, whatever. Is anyone still rocking the 2020 album? Like I got a kick out of that, and I liked it.
Yeah, but that's like, that means we've like made it in the metal world. People are like, oh man, you don't even know. You got to hear the old stuff. Like the metal world never changes. That's how it's always been.
you weren't there, man. You weren't there when.
Yeah, you don't even know.
Right.
Take me back to the early days of its inception then. Specifically a vision. Did you have one when you set out to make this record? And if so, what did it look like?
Man, I'm gonna probably sound like a huge loser, but like, obviously there's one side of things which is not reading too much into criticism or into reviews, but so the last record got a really good review, a really strong review from a popular blog called Angry Metal Guy,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very thoughtful review, and it kind of laid out, they've got a very rigid and strict scoring system, right? It's very hard to achieve really anything over a 4. And they kind of had laid out this blueprint, I thought, of like, okay, this is a good record. This is what these guys need to do to make a great record. And I think even before the review, I was not terribly familiar with the site and its writing, but I thought like, this guy gets us. He gets what we're trying to do. He gets what we're good at. And he's kind of like laid out a few things that we aren't executing very well. So it certainly wasn't me trying to cater to what a blogger had written, but I somehow, through the blogosphere, the universe had connected us with somebody who I thought laid out very clearly, like, this is the stuff you guys need to do if you need to take the next level. Better production. It's the same stuff I mentioned before, like maybe clean up some of the experimentation. It doesn't mean experiment less. It means make it all sound a little more organic or sticky. Better production. And I think, tightening up the clean vocals a bit. There was some like experimental, like traditional heavy metal vocals on the last record. And I feel like if you're gonna do that and put it on a death metal record, you better be fucking good at it, right? Like really good. Otherwise, you're gonna turn off your listeners, right? They don't want to hear, Wish.com, Bruce Dickinson, right in the middle of death metal growls, yeah. Right? You're gonna have to be better than that. And so again, I know it sounds a little bit myopic, but I said like, I could do all that stuff. I think the other bit of feedback was make it longer. Like this was just a taste. Give me the full meal. Mm-hmm. I said I could do all that, and I think it all makes sense. I think this guy is really telling us like the blueprint for a really great record. So I think those are actually my guiding principles. I said, creatively, we know what we want to do. Aki and I work really well together. We kind of know what our sound is. And let's just tighten up some of those things, right, and mature the sound a bit, and hopefully that's what we were able to do.
Yeah, and I think any high level operating organization, individual, anything, you want to self scout. You want to kind of look for areas where you can improve. So I don't think Chris saying like I don't want to sound like a like a wuss good on this. I think anytime you get criticism, you should objectively kind of look at it and be like, yeah, where can we improve? Like, how can we make this better? And my personally, and talking to Chris about this too, I think the first record I was trying to, there's so many good guitar players out there now. And like I was trying to maybe do some technical things that like, I'm just not as good technically as a guitar player as, Revocation or Frederick Thornhill, obviously. So I really just, for this record, I just focused more on, just playing stuff that kind of felt more organic, rather than trying to really, I'm always trying to push myself, but rather than trying to do stuff that I'm just incapable of doing, really focusing on composing something that was actually good, and fit and kind of came from the heart. So just to kind of go along with what Chris was saying. Yeah.
For the record, Aki, I think you have great chops, right? I know the bar somehow, like when me and you were growing up, and for anyone that doesn't know, like me and Aki have been making metal music together since we were about like 14, which needless to say was a very long time ago. I think the bar for technical guitar playing has like really risen over that time. Obviously, there were amazing guitar players when we were growing up, but now they just fall off trees, man. You go into YouTube and there's a 9-year-old in the Philippines just like shredding his ass off. You're like, fuck, man, I've been practicing for 20 years. I can't do that. For the record, I think you're very strong technically, but I think that mentality is what makes you such a great guitar player and soloist. Right? Some people can just kind of get away with it and just say, I'll do some fancy fretwork, and the fanboys will just gush over it. If you have in your head, well, I can't just get away with that every time, I've got to write something. I think the end result just speaks for itself, and it's so much more lasting and impactful than somebody just doing sweeps for 30 seconds.
Oh, thanks, bro.
So you had that sort of groundwork laid, as it were, and you kind of knew what direction you wanted to head in and what, where your abilities lay. But what specific point? So was there a specific point when you realized things were beginning to take shape, as it were, and it was looking like a full album, an album of, tracks?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know, Aki. Do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe I'll take a few seconds to try and collect mine.
Well, honestly, no. Honestly, like, excuse me. Our whole family's sick over here, so fighting something. Probably we had like a meeting, honestly.
Yep.
You came over. You came down from New Jersey down to Baltimore, and I think we sat down and hammered out a bunch of stuff, just really trying to make it something more, I don't know, something more intense than we had gone through last time. And I remember like thinking we were going to have something awesome at that time. I mean, the way it works is Chris, spends a lot of time laying down some ground tracks, and then he'll send them to me and we'll discuss. And maybe I'll start working on some guitar melodies, some solos, some stuff for the choruses, etc. But I remember like we had actually sat down and met face to face, which we had not done for the previous record. And it was kind of like, all right, like we want to be serious about this. Like we want to make this as like awesome as possible. What should go here? What should go there? What do you need from me? And actually had like a conversation, like how are the vocal lines going to go here? Like where can I fit something in over here? And I think like after that meeting, and I'm calling it a meeting, we really just hung out for a couple of days, but it was something we had not done for the previous record. I think it kind of, for me, it made a much clearer picture, and I just kind of felt it coming together better after that. We discussed over drinks and Afghan food. It was a good time, but it did come together for me after that a little bit more.
I guess I'll throw into that and say, we have a collaborator named Charlie. It's a gentleman named Charlie Monroe. Mm-hmm. He's based in the UK. He's a friend. He's kind of, I would say, our quasi producer. He's a fan. He's a collaborator. He, plays a few things on the album. He had mixed and mastered the album. And I think throughout the creative process, he was kind of like an independent arbiter for us. right? Like he's just somebody. I think when you're sitting outside of the creative process, you're not writing the songs. It's easier to say, this just doesn't work,
Yep.
right? I know you think it does, but it doesn't. Cut that. Um, and then I think he was very also outspoken about the flow of the songs on the record. Um, you know, trying to have kind of an organic feel from track 1 to 8, just a cohesive journey for the audience, for the listener. And I think that the order of the songs matters a bit, especially with some of the interludes and instrumental passages that we have. Right. So Charlie helped glue it together a bit as well. And maybe, as you put it, Carl, turning it from a collection of songs to an actual album.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, the UK as well, because the expectation, of course, would be somebody a bit closer to home.
So Charlie was like a guy I met over the internet. I think at the time he was starting his own death metal project. He was one of these guys where it's like there's a lot of them, but he's the best of them. Where it's like, I'm a multi-instrumentalist doing a home recording of death metal, and I need a singer, right? So, well, I could do that, and I need something to keep my voice warm in between our, 2-year Dystopia A.D release cycle, right? So, he sent me all these tracks, and I was blown away. It's just face melting tech death stuff, and he had such refined vision for how things should go. And we've made 2. That's under a project called Hellbore. We've made 2 Hellbore records.
Big Hellbore fan. I'm a big Hellbore fan.
Yeah, I think they're awesome. It's all Charlie. I'm just there. I could wake up out of bed and do my whole death metal, vocal shtick. But it's really tremendous stuff. So I just met Charlie through that, right? And it's funny because like 99 out of 100 of those are just garbage, right? Just some kid making a deathcore kind of record that is just the same, repeated drivel. And I took a flyer on this guy, Charlie. We had been talking in forums. I could tell he was, a smart guy. And, the payoff was that he was like, all right, here's what I'm working on. I'm like, this is the new Necrophagist album. This is amazing. So I just got linked up with him maybe 5 or 6 years ago that way. And we've just, I think, been friends ever since. Like, we stay in touch and chat.
Well, tech's advanced so much that this is so much easier than it used to be, particularly when you're a multi-instrumentalist and you're able to do everything from your bedroom, as it were. And a lot of that seems to have come about in the last few years as well, as people kind of got the grips with staying indoors and stuff like that. I have to ask, has the last few years, the difficulties, pandemic period and so on, had any kind of influence on I guess not just Doomsday Psalm, but even back to Rise of the Merciless, because that came out in 2020, the mid 2020.
Oh, I mean, it certainly impacted all of us, right? I think that the technology has probably enabled these things to happen, right? So, Aki was in the army, and stationed abroad when we had made the previous record. So, needless to say, that could not have happened in a prior life.
Yeah.
Aki and I have never been, even when he got out of the army and came back stateside, we've never been co-located for more than a day or 2 at a time over the past 4 years. So, I think like the tech has been, it certainly wasn't there when me and Aki were growing up. Right? I remember us recording stuff in your basement on one of those fucking 4-tracks or whatever.
Dude, we paid professional studio fees. We paid professional studio fees, recorded in an analog studio, and that sounded like dog shit compared to the stuff we just make on my laptop now. You remember that? Oh man.
Yeah, I remember that. And I'm making us sound really old when I say we recorded on a 4-track. They had better stuff. It's just that's what I could afford when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
it was a 4-track. That was not cutting edge technology. But still,
good money now. People pay good money now to try and get that sound.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's funny how that works when you've got your Steven Slate tape emulator that you slap on top of your digital mix to try and add some of that warmth back in. It's just yeah, Carl, it's funny what people will do. We probably did that as well. I'll ask Charlie.
Oh,
But yeah, so sorry, I'll jump in for that too. I mean, the first record, we recorded it all before COVID happened. But I was actually, I felt more isolated during the first record just because I was in Afghanistan. I came back, all the recording was done. I came back, it was mixed and then it got released. I think like right in the middle of COVID, right in July of 2020, something like that. It was right in the heat of COVID, I would say. But then obviously this entire second record was composed and recorded during COVID. And I'll be honest, like a lot of people didn't like, I mean, I did not like COVID just because, a lot of people are dying and it's an awful state for the world. But as far as like work and everything goes, like I actually thrived just because I don't love seeing other people on a daily basis. So being isolated actually wasn't too bad a thing during COVID. And frankly, it didn't really change our process at all just because we're just, sending each other tracks and discussing stuff over the phone and over email and when it come together. Anything that you hear, as far as like the record goes, comes organically from our own experiences at the time. So definitely you're going to hear influences from what was happening in the world or in our lives from the time going into it. But yeah, I mean, COVID affected everything. So ultimately, to answer your question, yes.
I think on both the last two records, I don't know if you agree, Aki, but there's definitely themes in the lyrics that might touch upon current events and things that are happening. But at the same time, like I don't want it to feel too real. Like I feel like it should be an escape from some of the existential terrors of being a human being. And obviously, you tap into the things you are living and feeling and seeing. But I don't know. I just don't want him to take it too seriously. I want people to have fun with it, and let this be an outlet to kind of forget about the other bullshit that's happening and matters. Music in all of its forms, right? Among other things, should be an escape or an outlet from some of the challenges of daily life.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've been meaning to ask you because ever since the lyric video for Carry On came out, people were like, "Oh, is that about COVID?" And I was like, I don't think it is actually, because so Carry On was an updated version of a song that actually came out on the very first Dystopia A.D album, Designing Ruin. And I actually was not on that track. So I don't even know if you changed the lyrics at all or the lyrics are the same from way before COVID even happened. So people were asking me, and I was like, I don't think it is actually.
It's not
Yeah.
about COVID. Maybe COVID was the inspiration to revive it and just get some 2022 punch into it. Like we've come a long way over those 5 years in terms of our capabilities and production value. And I thought that was one of my favorite songs that we had done on the 2017 record. I thought I don't want to I don't want to continuously rehash my own stuff, which I also tend to do. But I'm like, let's pick one song and just revive it. Maybe the theme is pertinent for the COVID world, but I just like the song. I just thought, if we jazz this up a bit and redo it, it could really be an ass kicker, which I think it is.
Yeah, it was my favorite song from that record too, other than the one that I was on.
I think there's almost an expectation or belief that any record that was made, recorded, worked on during this period will inevitably have some references to the time period, even if it's not on purpose. It might be just slipping in because of subconscious writing abilities and so on. And particularly though, I think you guys kind of ran in, not necessarily a difficulty, but you ran into the challenge of releasing an album during the early portion, which meant the potential of it getting buried amongst a mountain of stuff that was being released and no one really knew what was going on and there were no shows. So do you think Rise of the Merciless specifically, so July 31st, 2022, it goes out. Do you think it got its dues because it was released during that period and it may not have reached as many ears?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I I got to be honest. I mean, I don't have a great benchmark to compare that against. You know, we did a record in 2017, but that was really homebrew. I would say that was, you know, me getting back into the metal game after years and years and years, right? Like,
Yep.
so, you know, Aki and I made music throughout our adolescence, and we did shows and recorded stuff. Um, then life happened, man, right? Like, we went off to school and tried to figure our shit out. I was abroad for 4 years working, and when I came back, I was like, I'm an adult now. I'm stable. I've got a plan. Let's bring this thing that I always loved, this thing that was always a huge part of my identity in the back of my head. Let's start doing this again. So like the 2017 record, obviously it was the I think output of a lot of effort and creativity, but now I look at it as almost like a POC. It's like, can I still do this? Can I still write and perform and sing and, you know, figure out how to get it all on a listenable media? And it, you know, the result is okay, but I think that was just kind of a bit of a POC, and then, you know, called up Aki and said, let's do a real record this time. That was the 2020 record. So, you know, I think, long story short, sorry, the 2017 record didn't get a lot of buzz. We didn't really invest in the promotion. It was a little more of a, you know, bedroom recording, we'll call it. 2020, I said, let's do this for real. I thought, you know, overall good reception, decent digital sales, etc. Carlo, I don't think I know what good looks like, if that makes
Oh,
sense, right? Like, I don't know if that was more, less, or just the right amount of engagement that we should expect for a record at that time and that quality. Um, I think overall, just I was pleased with just what people had to say about the record, even though there was smattering of critical but helpful feedback along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't play live shows, and probably won't, at least until our kids are sentient. So, which is like indefinitely, I would say. So really, our only feedback that we get is just seeing like the downloads, the purchases, and then the reviews, which I would say generally overall, like the majority, like between the two records, has been, you know, overwhelmingly positive. So, I mean, you know, in the U.S. in modern day, like, you know, metal has gone very much underground, I would say. So it's really not unless you go to a metal show that you're gonna see other metal people open, like out in the open,
yeah.
very often. So it's kind of hard to like really gauge just on a day-to-day basis, other than just, you know, the feedback and the stats that you see online, basically.
And it's still such early days for Doomsday Psalm. So, you know, 6 months further down the line, I feel like you'll be able to get a better understanding of that record and how it's done. And then maybe that will hopefully be your benchmark going forward.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I hope so. Well said, Carl.
Well, sticking to the album then. No worries. Give me a sec. Ah, yes.
My dog was mine.
I can tell, yeah, no worries. We've got sticking to Doomsday Psalm specifically. What was for you individually the most challenging aspect of creating this record? And if you had one, what did you do to overcome it?
Good question. Aki, does anything come to mind? I'm kind of collecting my thoughts there.
Yeah, sure. Two things. First of all, just finding the time. Just you know, between our jobs, moving, you know, being a new parent, etc. Yeah, just finding the time was hard. But other than that, Chris is always kind of pushing boundaries of frankly my capabilities. I know that when you learn guitar, you grow up, you play in 4/4, and there's a couple beats that you play over, and that's about it. And you play you play in pentatonic, and then you play in a minor scale, and that's usually about as sophisticated as like anybody gets. Chris is sending me tracks that have multiple different keys, multiple different time signatures, and where I'm, you know, I basically have always have to challenge myself to basically keep up with what Chris is laying down here. So I enjoy the challenge, and I always think it's a great time. But I would say it was just challenging for me to basically write something. And I had the same issue with the last, not issue, but same opportunity with the last album too, where it's like, how do I make something that doesn't sound like a robot trying to play in a different time signature with multiple key changes, and actually still make it sound organic and actually good. And so I would say that was the challenge with the last record. That was the challenge with this record. And Chris is just awesome at composing stuff it's technical, but it also sounds good and organic, and it doesn't sound just like some robot creating stuff that's technical for no reason. So I always appreciate that.
Thanks for the kind words, Aki. I think, like, I suppose a couple of challenges come to mind was, we try to make progressive music that's interesting, right? There's got to be little things that make you feel like, well, I haven't quite heard this flavor before, right? I understand, metal's a bit of a saturated scene, and I think in response, not everyone tries to stand out, right? This is the new, blackened tech death, power slam band. People will try to label themselves to make you to sell something that is, you haven't heard this before. So kind of, when we talk about the progressive elements, it's how do I do this to create something that is a little different, more exciting or interesting without being too contrived, right? And there was a little bit of that on the last record, where there's a little bit of like, this is jarring. These starts and stops are jarring to me, and maybe the musicians are trying too hard, and that's off-putting to me as a listener. So kind of trying to make that all flow a bit better on this record. I think we achieved that. But generally what I struggle with is tinkering. Aki will tell you I'm like a tinkerer. Like most art is iterative, and there's not really a definition of perfection or being done, and just pulling yourself away and saying this is good enough. Like stop tinkering, right? Or you're never going to release it. I always struggle with that. I guess the result is just, longer time to production, a longer time to market. But something I just obsessive over is, little bits and things that are just ultimately meaningless in the greater flow of the song. But trying to iterate to the point where I feel really good about something.
That was good. And I actually learned that from Chris when we were, I guess it was our second band back in, I don't know, 1999. Mm-hmm. Our band was called Vigrid. We would write something, and I would write writing a solo for me would just be whatever came to mind at that immediate moment that we were playing the song at that time. And I was like, it's good enough, it's done. And then I would see Chris like with the 4-track kind of like constantly revising what we were doing, and really just meticulously. I was like, oh my God, like I don't do that at all. Whatever, fuck that, I'm not. And then eventually I actually matured. I was like, oh, it actually, you know what? This is actually the way it's supposed to be done. It actually produces a much more sophisticated, interesting product. And I learned that from Chris. And so I was probably frankly a better guitar player when I was 14, just because I had the time to practice. But now I think what we're making sounds a lot better, just because I actually have learned to take the time and constantly revise, think about what we're doing, making something actually good rather than just something as fast and loud as I could do, like at that given time.
I don't know if I would say if that's the way it should be done. It's a way it can be done. I'm not good enough to wake up out of bed and produce something that sounds good on the first cut.
That's true.
Right?
I think that's how it has to be done, unless you're a virtuoso, which I am definitely not.
The thing is, you're musicians, you're artists, you have evolved over time, your abilities have increased, you've learned new things, you're still going to learn new things. That is part and parcel of the job, the experience, the life of a musician. Which, speaking of which, then, was there anything specific working on Doomsday Psalm that you learned about yourself or even about each other? I swear I'm not just trying to stump you with these. I'm really not.
No, I think these are great questions. I want to give them the kind of response they deserve and not
Well,
half-ass it. Sorry, Aki.
yeah, no, I something I've learned just going through life is it's just funny because Chris and I have stayed friends this whole time, but I really hadn't had contact with Chris in years until he kind of came out and approached me about that very first um, album, Designing Ruin, and it was just for one track called The March.
Hmm.
And it's just funny, just throughout life, you kind of meet people, and you stay friends, or you may kind of drift apart. But it was awesome to get back with Chris, and Chris executes. And you meet people and you talk about doing stuff, or even like people you just talk about, like, oh yeah, we'll get together, we'll grab drinks, whatever. Never happens. Like so many people you meet in life don't actually follow through with anything. And literally, Chris has followed, like, finding another person that just sits down and just executes, just fucking executes, does what he says he's gonna do. Even though it takes like years to execute, and we both have, other jobs, we both have lives outside of metal that just require a lot from us. But to sit down and actually find another person where we can just, dedicate the time and just bang out and execute something from beginning to end multiple times at this point now, I think it's pretty rare, and I really appreciate that about Chris. And it's just awesome to find, people in the metal community and just be in it as a half functioning adult and just keep a foot in the metal world,
Yeah, no, I don't know if I can add anything to that. I agree with everything that Aki said about the project being a way of us kind of staying in touch, and like the same creative partnership that worked 20 years ago just still works today. Um, and it's definitely an outlet, right? Like we said earlier, like everybody, we've got jobs and families, but finding that cut of time to produce something and collaborate together, I don't think I could do it on my own. I know I couldn't do it on my own.
Hmm.
So um like both of us basically, I would say that it's part of our identities, right? And we need to cling on to it and not lose that, right? Like I don't want to wake up and be 60 and realize I missed out on all these years of making great music with really great people. um so I don't know when the next record's going to be, right? We obviously started this big chapter of parenthood during the kind of production cycle of the last record, but I'll anticipate it's the same story, even if it takes a little longer for the next album, which is, Aki and I will continue to kind of like collaborate and cycle through the creative process, and hopefully be making records until we're 60. So
80.
80. I mean, I'm glad the experience is so joyful for you both, particularly as a fan of your music. It resonates with me, but it resonates with many other people as well around the world. Can you put your finger on why your music does resonate with people?
um so like this is a pretty pretentious view of what we do, but like if someone tried to ask me what we're trying to do with Dystopia AD, like my answer would be like we want to take all the things that make metal awesome and embody them in songs, right? Like I don't think we want to be too wrapped up in what death metal should sound like, or what, you know, any particular genre should sound like. And again, I got to be careful not to go down to, well, you can't really put a genre on this. Well, of course you can,
Mm.
right? Like I'm not giving you that whole shtick, but like we think about like me and Aki like stuff like Blind Guardian and Sepultura. I even like some of the core stuff like, you know, Kill Switch Engage. Like just try to think about what is the stuff that has made metal so important to me over the years, right? Like why has metal been almost exclusively the stuff I've been listening to for the last 30 years of my life? And then what is it that kind of excites you and gets your endorphins rushing? And how do we kind of just make sure there's a taste of those things in each song. So again, I guess a very pretentious view of what we do, but you know, they're just elements of what excites listeners about metal. And I think it's unique to metal, right? Like I think there's just a certain connection between metal music and its fans that no one else really can get, right? The energy, the excitement. And again, how do we kind of inject those elements into our songs?
Yeah, and I don't. It's hard to put into words, but there's stuff that I don't know. Only metalheads would understand. Like I don't know. I just remember there's a there's like a Mina scale solo over a breakdown in section of Imperial on the new record, the opening track, and I remember Chris sending it back to me, and he had added like there's a little trill scale solo, and then Chris added just a single like whammy slam like right at the before a breakdown just like crushes you, and I was like that was perfect. Like no one outside of metal would even understand, but I was just like that hit the nail on the head, man. That thing fucking was perfectly placed, and it just gets you so pumped for the breakdown. And it's like, how do you explain that? You know, like us talking about it, like he's like, oh yeah, no, obviously that's awesome. Yeah, I know. But like no one outside and people, I think if you're into metal and you hear that, you're like, yep, that slaps, you know. But outside of metal, no one's gonna appreciate something like that. And I don't know, it's just funny. Like obviously, I have a lot of friends and know a lot of people that aren't into metal, and they're like, I don't get it. Like, what? And I was like, have you ever wanted to tell someone like, fuck you? Have you ever had that thought? It's like, well, yeah, of course. It's like, well, okay, well, that you understand metal to some point, because that's a lot of like, that's the emotion that a lot of metal captures. So don't tell me you don't understand. You just don't want to, admit that you have this dark side of you that you, that we enjoy. So anyway, I think the music embodies all of that.
I think you guys have done an incredible job. And while it appears you've got no concrete plans at the moment throughout 2023, I imagine you're just going to be tinkering, as it were.
At some point, I'll start sketching out some new songs, and we'll figure out what a timeline might look like. To kind of put any sort of dates on the next record would probably be overly ambitious at this point. But I could say creatively we'll continue, and it's just a matter of when and not if. I think I'm proud of what we've done, and I think we've kind of built this identity and sound. I was actually I'm gonna make a very unmetal statement. But I was listening to an interview with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who writes Broadway musicals and a bunch of Disney songs. Right? The kid is his best. Yeah. So and someone asked Lin-Manuel Miranda, "Are you going to continue to make musicals?" And he said, "Well, it took me a really long time to get good at it, so yes." And I think that's how I feel. Maybe Aki, not to speak on your behalf, but maybe you feel as well. It's like not only do I love it, but it took me a long time to really refine my craft and feel good about what I was doing. And I feel like it would almost be a shame not to make music, right? Aside from the fact that I enjoy it and love it and wake up for it. I feel like for us to have come this far with our identity, with our sound, and not make more songs would just be tragic.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean, especially as I get older and eventually the kids are going to be grown, like going to need some old man stuff to do too.
Yes.
It doesn't require me to hurt myself or anything, which is everything I do currently. But I plan to do this until I die,
Thing is, we're talking about the future, but this record, as of the time of recording, is 16 days old. So it's got a lot of legs on it. It's got a lot of running to do before we even consider what the future is for Dystopia A.D. But in the immediate time is the festive season. It is December 18th at the time of recording. And I have to ask you the last question and let you get on with the rest of your day. What does a Dystopia A.D. Christmas look like for you both?
Well, if you can't tell from literally everything I've said during this interview, I'm disappointingly bland. I am I am not making these records from the black metal dungeon with my corpse paint on.
Cool shirt though.
I do have cool T-shirts, as do you guys. So we now that I'm a full-fledged adult, we do Christmas in my house. I've got we'll call it an international family. So my mother-in-law is here from India. My sister will fly in from Denver, and my parents will come down. I will probably subject them to a bit of metal. There is like this Chuck Billy rendition of Silent Night. That is ridiculous.
From the Wish You a Metal Christmas and a Head-Banging New Year.
Yeah. And my tradition is to play it, to wake up the folks staying at my home on Christmas morning very early with that. Never gets old for me. But otherwise, I guess getting together with the people you love and drinking a bunch of wine and getting cool shit is pretty metal. And that's what we'll do.
Yeah. And similarly, Lamb, I actually have to work. So I'm actually an infectious disease doc at a hospital down here in Virginia. So I actually have to work Christmas Eve and Christmas, which Saturday and Sunday. But grandma and grandpa are coming down. My brother-in-law's flying in from Denver. So we both have people coming in from Colorado, I guess, sounds like. And so it's going to be family Christmas here. And, I'll be able to enjoy it probably early evening, late afternoon, hopefully get out of work at a decent time each day. So it should be good though. But yeah, it'll be our first Christmas with kids. So I guess all the traditions will start this year. We'll have to figure one out. I like the Chuck Billy. I forgot about that. I need to incorporate that somehow.
It's quite
maybe there's like a Halford. There's like a Rob Halford, like "Oh Holy Night."
Yes.
It's been out there. I found out about it yesterday. I'll send it to you, but that's awesome. That might make the rotation this year as well.
Nice.
Guys, much love, and I hope you have a wonderful festive period and to the end of the year. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I just want to mention one last thing, which is, we'll tag you on social media and stuff, but the new album, Doomsday Psalm, has made our top 20 albums of the year list.
Oh, wow.
Be up at the end of the year. So check out that. But again, I really loved speaking to you both. Wish you all the best. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, Carl, I think we just wanted to say, like, we really appreciate all of your support. Like, I remember, your review of the 2020 record as well. I think one of the first reviews to come out. And I think, you definitely get what we're trying to do. And just as a writer, as someone that's part of the scene, like, we really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
We mean that.
Yeah, totally agree. Really appreciate everything, man.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?